This is the story of the popes, men dressed in white robes, bearing a centuries-old legacy, leading the Catholic Church through faith, power, war, and peace. Today, we journey through the incredible history of the popes of the Vatican, from St. Peter, the First, to Pope Francis, the modern shepherd of over 1 billion Catholics worldwide. It's a story of belief and politics, of sacrifice and scandal. Welcome to Global Top Girl, and this is the history of the popes at the Vatican. 1. The beginning, St. Peter. According to Catholic tradition, the very first pope was St. Peter, a man who started not in a palace, but by the Sea of Galilee. His original name was Simon, a simple fisherman with calloused hands and a fiery heart. He lived in a time of Roman occupation, where life for the average Jew was tough, uncertain, and often dangerous. But everything changed when he met a wandering teacher named Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus gave Simon a new name, Peter, meaning rock. "You are Peter," Jesus said, "and on this rock I will build my church." It was a powerful declaration. And from that moment, Peter became more than just a follower. He became the foundation of a movement that would change the world. But Peter was far from perfect. The Gospels tell us he was impulsive, passionate, and deeply human. He once tried to walk on water, and sank. He declared he'd never abandon Jesus, but denied him 3 times on the night of his arrest. Yet, despite his failures, Peter was chosen. And that simple truth became one of the great messages of the Church. God does not choose the perfect, He perfects those He chooses. After the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus, Peter became a bold preacher of the faith. He traveled, taught, and performed miracles in the name of Christ. According to tradition, he eventually made his way to Rome, the heart of the empire, where he continued spreading the gospel despite the danger. During the reign of Emperor Nero, Christianity was still illegal, and persecution was brutal. Christians were arrested, tortured, and killed in public arenas. It was during this time that Peter was captured and sentenced to death. But Peter made a final request, that he be crucified upside down, because he felt unworthy to die in the same way as his Savior. His body, legend says, was buried on Vatican Hill. And centuries later, a massive basilica, St. Peter's Basilica, was built over his tomb. That humble fisherman, once afraid, once broken, became the first bishop of Rome, the first pope, and the spiritual father of more than 1 billion people today. Peter's story reminds us that leadership in the Church wasn't built on worldly power or wealth. It was built on faith, courage, and redemption. And in many ways, every pope who came after stood on the shoulders of Peter. 2. From persecution to power. In the earliest centuries of Christianity, being a follower of Jesus was dangerous. Christians were viewed as enemies of the Roman state, a secretive cult that refused to worship Roman gods or recognize the emperor as divine. Many early believers were arrested, tortured, and executed. Some were thrown to lions in the Colosseum. Others, like St. Peter and St. Paul, were martyred in Rome. The early popes lived under constant threat. They led underground churches, held secret masses, and risked everything just to keep the faith alive. For over 2 centuries, every pope knew that his position could mean a death sentence. But in the year 313 AD, the world changed. That was the year when Emperor Constantine issued the Edict of Milan, a decree that made Christianity legal throughout the Roman Empire. For the first time, Christians could worship freely. Churches were built openly. Bishops became respected members of society. And the Bishop of Rome, what we now call the Pope, began to rise in both spiritual and political authority. Constantine himself was baptized before his death. And he moved the capital of the empire eastward, to a new city named after him, Constantinople. With the emperor now focused on the east, the Bishop of Rome gained new influence in the west. The Pope began to be seen not only as the leader of the Church, but as a moral guide for kings, generals, and even emperors. By the 5th century, the Roman Empire in the west had collapsed. Barbarian invasions brought chaos to Italy. Cities fell. Civil order broke down. But one institution survived, the Church. And at its head was the Pope. In this vacuum of power, the Pope became more than a religious leader. He became a symbol of stability. While kingdoms rose and fell, popes continued to be elected. They negotiated with invading tribes. They organized food relief. They even defended the city of Rome itself. In many ways, the Pope became Rome's last emperor, not by claiming power with a sword, but by leading with faith, wisdom, and presence. And so, the transition was complete. The Pope, once a fugitive preaching in catacombs, was now the most respected figure in Europe. From persecution to power. But with power comes responsibility, and, soon, temptation. The next chapter of papal history would not be about survival, but about politics, corruption, and reform. 3. The controversial popes. The darker side of the papacy. Power can inspire greatness, but it can also corrupt. And the history of the papacy, like the history of any institution spanning centuries, is not without its shadows. While many popes were men of deep prayer and compassion, others became symbols of political intrigue, luxury, and moral decay. The Middle Ages, in particular, saw some of the most turbulent chapters in papal history. Take, for example, Pope John XII, who ascended to the papacy at the age of just 18. Historians have described his reign as scandalous, accusing him of turning the Lateran Palace into what some called a brothel. He was rumored to gamble, drink excessively, and even commit acts of violence. His enemies within the church accused him of blasphemy and unholy behavior, and he died under mysterious, even sordid circumstances. Then came Pope Alexander VI, perhaps the most infamous of them all. Born Rodrigo Borgia, he rose to power through strategic alliances and blatant nepotism. He appointed his relatives, especially his son, Cesare Borgia, and his daughter, Lucrezia, to key positions in both the church and the military. The Borgia name became synonymous with corruption, poisonings, and political manipulation. Alexander VI wasn't shy about his wealth. He lived lavishly, hosted extravagant parties, and used the church's power as a personal dynasty. And yet, even in these dark times, the papacy survived. It adapted. It endured. The 14th century brought about the Avignon papacy, when the seat of the Pope moved from Rome to France. For nearly 70 years, the Pope resided in Avignon under the heavy influence of the French crown. This period, often criticized as the Babylonian captivity of the Church, weakened the spiritual authority of the papacy. And if that weren't chaotic enough, the 15th century saw the Western Schism, when there were not one, not two, but three men claiming to be Pope at the same time. Europe was divided. Loyalty to Rome splintered. For decades, the Catholic world was unsure who the true vicar of Christ really was. These crises severely damaged the credibility of the Church. And yet, perhaps ironically, they also set the stage for reform. For purification. For renewal. The cracks in the Vatican's foundations would lead to the rise of new voices, reformers like Martin Luther, who challenged the excesses of the Church and sparked the Protestant Reformation. In many ways, the controversial popes were a mirror to the times they lived in, eras of feudal battles, royal ambitions, and fragile morality. Their stories may be uncomfortable, but they are part of the truth. Because even the holiest of thrones is still occupied by a man. 4. Modern times. Losing land, gaining influence. By the 19th century, the world around the Vatican had changed dramatically. The Papal States, the vast territories under the direct control of the Pope, were being threatened by the unification of Italy. In 1870, Rome, which had been the heart of the Papal States, was captured by the Kingdom of Italy, marking the end of the Pope's temporal power over a significant part of Italy. This left the Pope with no land to govern and a deep sense of loss. The Vatican, as a spiritual entity, was still the center of the Catholic Church, but politically, it had been reduced to almost nothing. For nearly 60 years, the papacy refused to recognize the newly formed Kingdom of Italy, and popes during this time, such as Pope Pius IX, took a stance of prisoner of the Vatican, refusing to leave the confines of Vatican City. The issue of the Papal States became one of the most contentious political matters between the Vatican and Italy. However, as Italy modernized and the world entered the 20th century, things began to change. The Catholic Church found itself in a difficult position. While its political influence was weakened, its moral authority remained unparalleled in the eyes of millions of Catholics around the globe. In 1929, an agreement between the Vatican and Italy, known as the Lateran Treaty, changed everything. Signed by Pope Pius XI and the Prime Minister of Italy, Benito Mussolini, this treaty recognized the independence of Vatican City as a sovereign state, thereby giving the Pope a degree of control over his territory once again. This agreement also provided the Church with certain privileges, including the ability to engage diplomatically with other nations and influence global matters from a position of authority. The Vatican became recognized as a city-state, the smallest country in the world, and its influence extended far beyond its borders. Though it lost much of its land, the Church's voice became more important than ever in the moral and political spheres. Popes now had the freedom to speak out on international issues, including human rights, peace, and justice. Pope John XXI in the early 1960s was one of the first to truly embrace this global influence. His Second Vatican Council, 1962 to 1965, sought to modernize the Church, engaging with the modern world and fostering dialogue between different religions. He opened the doors of the Vatican and sought to heal the divides within Christendom. His influence helped shape the Vatican's role as a moral compass, not just for Catholics, but for the world at large. As the Vatican's diplomatic power grew, so did its efforts to influence peace in regions of conflict. For example, Pope John Paul II, whose papacy lasted from 1978 to 2005, became a pivotal figure in the fight against communism, particularly in Eastern Europe. His support of the Solidarity movement in Poland, a non-violent trade union led by Lech Walesa, is credited with playing a critical role in the eventual fall of the Soviet Union. Pope John Paul II's role as a political figure is one of the most remarkable in modern history. His ability to merge spiritual leadership with political activism earned him global respect. Even in the face of assassination attempts and health struggles, his leadership never wavered. Today, the Vatican remains a powerful force in global diplomacy, and the Pope continues to be a highly influential figure on the world stage. While the Pope no longer wields temporal power over nations, his moral authority and ability to shape public opinion are stronger than ever. The Vatican's role in addressing global challenges, from the climate crisis to the fight for social justice, ensures that the papacy will continue to be an influential player in the shaping of global affairs. 5. Popes who changed the world. One of the most transformative popes of the 20th century was Pope John Paul II, born Karol Wojtyla in Poland. His election in 1978 marked a turning point not only for the Vatican but also for the world. John Paul II was the first non-Italian pope in over 400 years, and his unique perspective as a Polish cardinal shaped his papacy. His passionate advocacy for human rights, his opposition to communism, and his role in the fall of the Soviet Union are just a few of his historic accomplishments. During his 27-year reign, John Paul II became a symbol of hope for millions. His steadfast defense of the dignity of the human person and his calls for peace resonated around the globe, particularly in Eastern Europe. His visit to his homeland in 1979 inspired the Solidarity movement, which played a crucial role in toppling communist regimes in Poland and beyond. Not just a political figure, John Paul II also sought to bridge the divide between different faiths. He made significant strides in improving relations with Jews, Muslims, and other Christian denominations. His visit to the Holy Land in 2000, where he prayed at the Western Wall, was a historic gesture of reconciliation. One of the most defining moments of his papacy was his ability to relate to the youth. John Paul II made World Youth Day a global event, drawing millions of young people together in celebration of faith and hope for the future. His message was clear: the youth were not just the future of the Church, but the future of the world itself. Pope Benedict XVI, his successor, brought a more scholarly and introspective approach to the papacy. A renowned theologian, Benedict was focused on strengthening the spiritual foundations of the Church. His papacy was marked by efforts to address the Church's internal issues, including the sexual abuse crisis, and his commitment to upholding Catholic tradition in an increasingly secular world. However, it was Pope Francis who took the helm in 2013, bringing a radical shift in tone and priorities. Born Jorge Mario Bergoglio in Argentina, Pope Francis became the first Jesuit pope and the first Latin American to hold the position. His papacy has been marked by an emphasis on humility, simplicity, and a deep concern for the poor and marginalized. Pope Francis is known for his down-to-earth style, living in the Vatican guest house rather than the Apostolic Palace, and his preference for taking public transportation. He has consistently called for greater attention to environmental issues, advocating for action on climate change and the protection of the earth as a shared home for all of humanity. His 2015 encyclical, Laudato Si, was a groundbreaking document, calling for global cooperation to address environmental degradation. Beyond his environmental advocacy, Pope Francis has been a vocal critic of the global economic system, highlighting the inequalities that persist between the rich and the poor. His critiques of the throwaway culture, where people and the planet are treated as disposable, have sparked worldwide conversations on how to build a more just and sustainable world. Under Pope Francis, the Church has also focused on dialogue with other faiths and fostering peace. His historic meeting with Patriarch Kirill of the Russian Orthodox Church in 2016 was a major step toward reconciliation between two ancient Christian traditions. He has worked tirelessly to address the issues of refugees, migrants, and the plight of the marginalized, reminding the world that caring for the most vulnerable is at the heart of Christian faith. In all their ways, these popes, John Paul II, Benedict XVI, and Francis, have shaped the modern world in profound and lasting ways. Whether through political activism, interfaith dialogue, or advocacy for the poor, their legacies are a testament to the continuing relevance of the Vatican in global affairs. The story of the popes is not just about the Church, it's a reflection of the journey of humanity itself. Through centuries of triumphs and struggles, of faith tested by time and power, we see the deep connection between belief and the human spirit. The popes have been witnesses to history, guiding millions with their messages of peace, love, and hope, while also facing their own flaws and challenges. They've helped shape not only religious faith but the very fabric of our shared humanity. From St. Peter, who gave his life for what he believed in, to Pope Francis, who calls for compassion and unity in our world today, their legacy continues to inspire us all. So, what does this history mean for us today? It reminds us that in a world full of division, power, and chaos, we all share a common need for faith, for hope, and for a sense of belonging. The popes may sit on a throne of power, but their message is one of humility and love for all. If you believe in the power of human connection, the strength of hope, and the importance of understanding our shared stories, then join us. Let's continue to learn, grow, and reflect on the stories that shape us. Don't forget to subscribe to Global Top Girl for more inspiring stories and deep dives into history, faith, and the world that connects us all. Together, let's keep exploring the past, understanding the present, and building a better tomorrow.